Family drama erupts. Card password changed. Daughter-in-law humiliated. The door slammed open so hard the hinges shrieked a sound like metal scraping bone. I was folding sun-warmed shirts still smelling of the afternoon when heavy, hurried footsteps crashed through like a storm finding its eye. "Where's Mum? Get out here now." I froze. The words, "Where's Mum?" were strange, less a daily call than an indictment. I set the pile of clothes down, wiped my hands on my skirt, and stepped out into the hall. Marcus stood in the middle of the living room, my son 42, face-flushed veins standing out at his neck. The blue eyes he inherited from Robert darkened as if glazed with a thin sheet of ice. His fingers curled into fists and opened again, clenching and releasing as if the slightest relaxation would make everything explode. "Why was Chloe's card payment declined at the supermarket? Why did you change the card PIN without telling anyone?" He snarled each word a compressed blow. "You humiliated my wife in front of everyone." My stomach tightened. A sharp ache crawled up my spine. "Marcus, lower your voice. This is my house." I kept my tone soft but steady. "I changed the PIN because it's my card." "Yours?" He curled his lip. "We're a family. That card's been the family card for ages." "Since when?" I asked, hating the slight tremor in my own voice. "Since when did my money become joint property that can be used without asking?" Heat flushed my face. I looked at the old armchair by the window, the very chair I'd sat in 40 years ago, to nurse him to hum lullabies until he slept. The chair remained, the lullaby remained, but the child I'd cradled had vanished somewhere along the way. "You humiliate my wife by saying she must ask permission every time." Marcus stepped closer, his cologne mixed with the acid tang of his anger. "Chloe only buys household things, food, cleaning supplies, normal stuff." I had meant to stay quiet to wait for him to cool down. But the bolded numbers on the statement rose up in my mind: $500 at Grand Table Restaurant, $300 at Elegance Boutique, $200 in cosmetics. 4 ATM withdrawals of $300 at 3 in the morning. "No, Marcus." I looked him straight in the eye. "Those transactions weren't for food or cleaning supplies." His face twitched. "Are you saying my wife is lying?" "Yes, she lied." A silence thick as dust on an old painting settled. I could hear the clock slow ticking on the wall and my own heart beating in my chest. "Mum." His voice dropped but grew colder. "I think it's time someone else managed your finances. You're becoming suspicious." It felt as if a band of ice had tightened around my throat. "Are you saying I'm losing my mind?" He didn't answer. He just stared at me like some unpleasant number on a spreadsheet that needed erasing. "Marcus." I drew a breath like pulling a rope tightened around my ribs. I said no. "If Chloe needs money, she can ask. But this card is not going to be a direct tap into my pension anymore." He laughed once dryly, then spun away and back. "So listen, either give us the new PIN, or you'll regret it." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm warning you." He said it, and at the corner of his eye I saw not tears, but something cold as steel. "You're tearing the family apart over a few numbers." "Not a few numbers," I answered. "It's 2 years of my freedom being steadily taken away." He turned his back. The door slammed. The house fell into a fragile void. I went and set my hand on the polished arm of the chair, and for a moment I felt 10 years older. The phone rang. I let it go to answer. Chloe's voice cut through, silk thin but sharp as paper. "Sylvia, I know you're listening. Happy now Marcus is suffering because of you. You changed the PIN and made me look ridiculous in that long queue. Is that how you treat family?" A contrived sigh, then a click. I held the silent receiver and thought of the day she first came into our home, the bright bouquets, well-placed compliments, the stories about a job that was stressful but passionate. It had all been staged. I didn't know when she'd slipped into the safe room, taken my card, and fed it through a copier. In the corner of the photocopy was a hurried slanted note, "For emergencies, see." I rifled through the safe, the box of papers I guarded like my own heart. The photocopy lay stark white, bare enough to feel exposed. Behind that tidy ribbon of the word emergency was a plan, an arm reaching past my home, past me and my independence. That night, just as I dozed, the phone rang again. I picked it up, wary that someone might be in need. Chloe's voice was light as a breath. "Read me the 3 numbers on the back of the card. I need to buy medicine online urgently." "Chloe, give me back my card," I said slowly, each word a sob. She giggled into the receiver. "Oh, Mom, do you think you remember everything? You're at that age. Let the young people handle money. It's safer." For the first time, I put the phone down mid-sentence. My hand shook, but somewhere behind my sternum a small flame ignited. The next morning I called the bank. There were cash withdrawals at 3:07, 3:11, 2:58 a.m. I was home. I didn't withdraw. The clerk's voice was even. "We'll cancel the card and issue a new one within 5 business days." "And the transactions?" I asked. "You can dispute them, but we need evidence." Evidence. The word woke another woman inside me, not the fumbling mother, not the timid old person, but the woman who once worked double shifts for 10 years and single-handedly kept this house from collapse. I printed the statements. I spread them across the dining table like a battle map. The black streaks of ink were the invaders' advanced restaurant, boutique, spa, ATM, boutique, online purchase. One night had it all, 8:00 p.m. dining at Grand Table, and at the same time a purchase at Elegance Boutique 12 miles away. One person couldn't be in 2 places unless there were 2 matching cards. I looked at the photocopy. Chloe had made at least 1 copy, maybe more. While I was marking things in red pen, the door opened again, this time without force. 3 polite knocks, patient like counterfeit courtesy. Marcus walked in first, Chloe behind him carrying shopping bags. She looked around as if inspecting a newly rented flat. "Mum," Marcus began quietly, "we've talked. You're stressed. This isn't good for your health, so let us manage it for you." "Manage what?" I asked. "Your finances." Chloe shrugged, smiling a smile thin as a knife. "We'll make sure the spending is reasonable. You just relax and enjoy your old age." I pointed to the papers covering the table. "Reasonable. This reasonable." I tapped the figures with my pen. 25,000 in 2 years, designer items, restaurants, weekend resorts. Who's enjoying their retirement here? Marcus didn't look at the paper. He looked at me like the 16-year-old who once stood in the yard defying me for making him come home by 10. But today he had no youth in his eyes, only a man who wanted to possess. "You're being dramatic," he said. "We do this for the family. I need to look presentable for work. Chloe needs to dress well. Those dinners are bonding." "Marcus," I said, my voice thick, "I fed you broth and bread for the first 12 years of your life. You don't need Grand Table to become someone. People don't bond over an $80 glass of wine. People bond over conscience." Chloe rolled her eyes. "If you want to be stingy, we can talk solution. Give us a fixed allowance, $1,500 a month. That way, you stay in control and we have peace of mind. Win-win." $1,500. I repeated the number, spilling to the floor like a puddle. 18,000 a year to glitter the death in the neighbor's eyes. Chloe changed tack instantly. "Or we can try 1 month and then you decide. You give the pin, and at the end of the month, you review." "No," I said. "I don't experiment with boundaries. Boundaries are either there or they're not." Marcus lunged forward. His breath was on my face. "Don't blame us then. If you don't cooperate, the court will help us." "Guardianship," I cried. "The legal name is nice. Conservatorship." Chloe said, soft as ordering dessert. "The court will protect you from yourself." Something inside me cracked, but after the crack came a strange clarity. "You two leave my house," I said. Now, you'll regret this, Marcus said. When they closed the door, the air smelled of a set trap. Night fell. I sat among the papers. Outside, the paper flower bush trembled carefree to the point of cruelty. The phone rang. This time, it was the bank. They confirmed they would mail a detailed report within 3 days. I tidied the piles, slotting each page into a folder labeled Things Never to Forget. Around 11, I heard an engine start and then silence. A shadow stopped outside the gate and watched. I drew close to the window and parted the curtain a sliver. I couldn't see the face, only the tiny red flare of a cigarette tip that winked out. I closed the curtain and felt my heart banging. Then a message. Mom, open the door. I want to talk one last time before this goes too far. I did not open. I sat counting my breaths. A sheet of paper slid under the door. I picked it up, an old photograph, Marcus at 6, perched on a bicycle, his helmet too big, grinning like sunlight. On the back, a messy scrawl. If you still love me, trust me. I held the photo to my chest and wept. But with my other hand, I gripped the folder. I loved my son, but I had to love myself first. The next morning, I went across to Alma's house. She answered the door, hair freshly washed with soapberry scent still clinging. I told her everything, door slamming, the guardianship threat, the photocopy, the 3 a.m. withdrawals. Alma listened, her eyes fixed on me. Then she said calmly, like a sky before the storm, "You need a lawyer, and you need to stand tall." "Alma," I whispered, "I'm scared." "Being scared is fine, but choose a side. Being scared and standing, that's courage." She placed her hand on the back of mine. "I know someone. Vincent Harris. He does it for justice, not fame." At that moment, the name was a pebble falling into a pool, making a tiny ring. Later, it would be a shoreline. But right then, I only felt the warmth of Alma's hand, like when I'd held Marcus's to cross the road when he was small. In the afternoon, the postman knocked. A thick envelope, transaction report. I made tea and turned the pages. There were the middle of the night hours. IP addresses tied to Marcus's home. Blurry store CCTV images included blonde woman, card in hand, swiping my card at the terminal. My hands trembled, but my eyes lit up. It was no longer suspicion. It was proof. Just as I put the envelope back in the cupboard, the bell rang, 3 polite knocks. I opened. A young man in a neat suit stood there holding a leather briefcase, his smile professional. "Ms. Sylvia Johnson, I'm Roberts from Hazen & Associates. Your son wanted to discuss your future security." The air in the corridor shifted. I invited him in. He outlined slick terms, capacity assessments, temporary guardianship, asset protection, all dressed up like a nice brochure on elder care. "Thank you," I said as he rose. "Tell Marcus I'll hire my own lawyer." He hesitated a fraction, then kept his smile. "We'll be in touch." The door shut. I leaned back against it and let the cold of the wood seep into my bones. The chill sharpened my senses more than any cup of coffee. That night, the phone rang at 3:00 a.m. I answered by instinct. At first, a garbled breathing, then Chloe's voice, small and triumphant. "Hope you're happy making your son go to court. Do you know how your husband used to earn money? Dirty money? Do you think you're sitting on that armchair clean?" I hung up. For the first time in my life, I didn't argue when someone smeared the name of the man I loved. I didn't have to. Tomorrow, the truth would do the work. I opened the window. The night was dry and cold. The paper flowers in the garden lay still, their thin petals like red envelopes. I thought of Robert and the thing he once told me, "Teach Marcus to be a decent man. That is the only legacy we can leave." I'd tried. I'd done my best. And now I had one last lesson to teach myself, how to stand for myself. I sat at the table and wrote the first items on the list. Lawyer, Vincent Harris, recommended by Alma. Save everything, photos of vandalized gate messages, calls, newspaper clippings, evidence of harassment. Dispute the transactions, file the packet tomorrow morning. Change the safe lock. Put photocopies in a separate envelope labeled evidence. Reminder to self. I am lucid. I am not mad. I have the right to say no. I put the pen down. I listened to my heartbeat. Steady. Strong. No longer skipping. At dawn, Alma drove me to a small office in town. A wooden sign read, Vincent Harris, Elder Law and Justice. The door opened to the smell of old wood and faint coffee. The man with salt and pepper hair stood and offered his hand, his gaze steady as a still lake. Ms. Johnson, he said. Hello, I'm Vincent. We have a lot to do, but first please have a seat. I squeezed his hand. In that gentle grip, I felt something I'd been desperately searching for over 2 years, a steady shoulder to lean on, eyes that looked straight at me. No pity, no contempt, no hunger. Only trust. Vincent sat and listened as I told the story. No interruptions, no rush. When I spread the bank statements, he pushed up his glasses and said in a low, firm voice, "You are not paranoid. You've been abused by the legal standard. This is financial elder abuse and identity theft. We will stop the conservatorship and then strike back." I exhaled a long breath until my eyes stung. Sometimes I thought to survive, a person only needs the right name for the thing. Vincent asked for the photocopies, the photo of the painted gate, the messages. He carefully filed each item, labeling and numbering them. "Go home and rest," he said warmly. "Leave the rest to me." When I stepped out, the sky seemed higher and a darker washed blue. I knew the real fight had only begun, but for the first time, I was not alone. That evening, I sat in the garden with a steaming cup of tea. The old armchair watched me from the window like an old friend. I closed my eyes and listened to leaves brushing. If this was the prelude to whatever lay ahead, courtrooms, accusations, sleepless nights, red paint streaks, let me keep this moment tranquil as a smooth pebble in a pocket. The phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "Mum, don't do this. I warned you." I deleted it. I opened my notes and added, "Anonymous threats save." I looked up at the sky. Inside, a voice rose, not a lullaby, not a threat. "They will take everything if you do not hold on to yourself." I smiled, weary and proud. I am holding on. And this time, I'm not letting go. That afternoon, around 2 o'clock, I was folding laundry in the bedroom when the front door suddenly burst open. The hinges screamed, and then heavy footsteps thudded through the house. "Mum, where are you?" I started. It was Marcus's voice, my son, now 42. But the way he shouted that day, it was like a storm barreling in. I stepped out of the room and saw him standing in the middle of the living room, face flushed, scarlet eyes blazing, fists clenched. The last time I'd seen that fierceness in his eyes was when he was a teenager. "Marcus, what's going on?" I tried to keep my voice even. "Why did Chloe call me in tears? Why did you change the card pin without telling anyone? She got declined at the supermarket, humiliated in front of everyone." I stood silent for a moment. 70+ years of life had taught me to stay calm, but my heart hammered. "Marcus, lower your voice. This is my house. And yes, I changed the pin. Because it's my card." He glared. "Your card? Are you kidding me? We're family. How can you throw up walls when I need help?" A cold line ran down my spine. "Marcus, that's my hard-earned money. If you need something, just say so. But the card can't be for anyone to use." "Anyone to use?" he shouted. "Are you calling my wife anyone? She's your daughter-in-law. She's your family." I sat down in the familiar armchair, the one that had rocked Marcus to sleep when he was small. I was shaking, but I forced my voice to stay level. "Chloe is always welcome here, Marcus, but a credit card isn't a communal family service." He began pacing like a caged animal. "You're so stingy. You used to be generous to outsiders, and now when it's my turn, you count every penny." The word stingy cut like a knife. I once worked double shifts so he could go to university. I scraped and saved to help with the down payment on his first flat. And now, in my own home, he was calling me miserly. "Marcus," I said, standing and making my voice firm. I changed the PIN because I discovered charges that were never authorized. Fine dining cosmetics designer goods. Those aren't essentials. He choked for a second, then ground out each word. "Are you saying my wife lied I couldn't hold it back?" "Yes, Chloe lied." The room dropped into silence. Marcus stared at me as if I'd slapped him. "I won't let you insult my wife. If you keep this up, maybe someone else should manage your finances." My heart seemed to stop. He meant I wasn't lucid enough to handle my own money. "Marcus, you need to leave the house right now. I'm not going anywhere until I have the new PIN. No, son. This is my decision. If Chloe needs something, she can ask me directly. But this card is no longer the family card." He hesitated, then spoke in a voice cold as ice. "Fine. This isn't over. One day you'll regret tearing the family apart over a few numbers in an account." The door slammed. I was alone, trembling. The whole house sank into a heavy silence. Not the usual peace, but a thick, suffocating void. I sat back in the armchair. 40 years of motherhood, and here I was, listening to my own son shout and threaten over a PIN. But I knew it wasn't just a PIN. It was about control, about boundaries, about, for the first time in years, daring to say no. And this was only the beginning. I still remember the day Marcus brought Chloe home to meet me. I was fussing in the kitchen, the pot of macaroni and cheese bubbling, when the door opened and my son walked in with a smile shining like he'd found treasure. Beside him was a tall, slender girl with blonde hair, glossy nails, and clothes so expensive, I had to wonder, how could a young woman working in a fashion store afford all of that? "This is Chloe, the woman of my life," Marcus introduced, proud. She reached out, shook my hand, and flashed a dazzling smile, but there was something cold in her eyes. That evening, she was all sweetness, praising my cooking, asking about the garden, even offering to help with the dishes. Marcus looked at me gratefully, and I told myself, my son is happy. That's enough. But not long after, the favors began. At first, it was $200 for rent, then $300 for work clothes. I thought, they're young. Everyone struggles sometimes. I can help a little. But the promised payback dates never arrived. Instead came more requests, always with a good reason, always with a promise to repay soon. 500, 1,000, until the total I'd given had crept past 5,000. I started to worry, but Marcus felt differently. When I gently brought up the money, he snapped, "Mum, why are you clinging to an IOU like that? You'll give strangers 1,000 without counting, but with your own son, you nitpick every penny." His words sliced into me. Isn't family the place where we can be most honest? And yet, my son treated my caution as a crime. Then one day, Chloe called voice urgent. "Sylvia, my card's locked. I need to buy medicine for my mum. Could I borrow your card for a day? Just today, I promise." I softened. Just one day, I told myself. That night, when I checked my account, I saw the medicine charge $150, but also cosmetics, clothes, and a fancy dinner. Over $500 in one day. The next morning when I asked, she cried and pleaded, "I'm sorry, I was weak. There was a huge sale. I'll pay it back tomorrow." But that tomorrow never came. From then on, my card became the lifeline for any sort of emergency: friends' birthdays, parties, shoes, wedding anniversaries. The emergencies never stopped. The worst part was that Marcus changed. He no longer defended me or listened. He took his wife's side completely. When I mentioned the unreasonable spending, he frowned. "Mum, why are you so calculating? Families should share." I went cold. Share? Hadn't I shared enough, working double shifts for years so he could go to college, helping him get his first home? I began to realize Chloe treated my house as if it were hers. She took things from the fridge without asking rifled drawers, and one day I found inside the box of important documents a photocopy of my credit card, the 3 security digits written clearly with a scrawl for emergencies. See, my heart stopped. Since when could she just walk into my room, open the cabinet, rummage through my papers, and brazenly copy my financial information? That night, I sat in the dark and looked back over everything since the day Marcus married. I saw how the boundaries had slowly blurred between helping and being exploited, between family and stranger, between love and control. My house was no longer my home. My money was no longer mine. And the most terrible thing was that I no longer recognized the son I had raised with my whole life. When I changed the card pin, when I dared to say no for the first time, that was the moment the mask fell. Marcus was no longer the boy I remembered. Chloe was no longer the sweet daughter-in-law from the early days. In front of me were 2 strangers looking at me like a walking wallet. And I understood the real tragedy had only just begun. From the day I changed the pin, the air in my once familiar house grew heavy. Every phone ring, every unexpected knock made my heart clench. I knew Marcus and Chloe wouldn't stop. They were used to me being the money tree, the bottomless ATM. And now that I had cut off that dependency, they treated me like a traitor. 3 days after Marcus's shouting fit in the living room, the phone rang. I didn't pick up. The answering machine clicked on and Chloe's voice rose high and hard. Sylvia, I know you can hear this. Are you happy making Marcus suffer? What kind of mother changes a pin and makes her son lose face at the market? Shame on you. Shame. I sat frozen in the armchair, letting every word pierce my heart. I had once hoped for a daughter-in-law to share affection, to fill the space Robert left behind. But now, every time Chloe spoke, all I heard was threat, contempt, and bottomless greed. That afternoon, I opened the document cabinet to check my insurance papers and found a strange envelope. Inside was a photocopy of my credit card. Clearly, someone had entered my room, unlocked the cabinet, taken out the card, copied it, and slipped the copy into the envelope. In the corner was the scrawl for emergencies. See. My hands shook violently. Chloe had come into my room, into my private papers. This wasn't an emergency. This was blatant invasion. That evening, the phone rang again. This time, I accidentally picked up. Chloe's voice was sweet as syrup. Sylvia, you remember the last 3 numbers on the card, right? I need to buy a few things online, urgent. Just read them to me. It's simple. I swallowed hard. Chloe, you've held onto that card far too long. Give it back to me. Silence on the line, then a thin laugh. You really think you can manage on your own? At your age, one day you'll forget your own PIN. It's better to let us handle it. A cold chill ran down my back. The daughter-in-law I'd hoped would bring Marcus happiness now openly saw me as helpless, a hollow wallet that needed young people to manage it. I hung up my chest in turmoil. A few days later, Marcus and Chloe showed up at my door. They didn't shout like before. They sat across from me, eyes calculating. Marcus spoke first. Mum, we've talked. You're too stressed about money. Let us manage it. We'll spend reasonably transparently. You just rest and enjoy your old age. I laughed dryly. You call that reasonable? Nearly $25,000 in 2 years on restaurants, shoes, trips. You call that transparent? Chloe cut in voice. Pitched high. Are you accusing us of stealing? Are you doubting your own son? I couldn't hold back anymore. Yes, I doubt you. Because all the proof is right here. I set the stack of printed statements on the table. This is my pension. This is the sweat of my whole life. And you've drained it. Marcus slammed the table. You're paranoid. Everything we do is for the family, for a better life. I looked him straight in the eye. Marcus, do you remember who worked double shifts for 10 years to pay your tuition? Who gave you the deposit for your first flat? And now this is how you repay me, by colluding with your wife to clean out what I saved. Chloe shot to her feet, voice choked but still fierce. "You're ungrateful. I've treated you like a mother, and now you treat me like a thief. If you won't trust us, we'll walk away. But don't blame us when you end up alone with no one by your side." Marcus narrowed his eyes, cold as steel. "Either you hand over the card or we'll find another way to get legal control. You're not lucid anymore. You just don't realize it." I stood stunned. "What did you just say?" Guardianship, Marcus said curtly. "If you won't cooperate, the court will decide, and then you won't have any right to argue." I dropped back into the chair, my heart stabbing in beats. My own son, the child I once held in my arms, now looked at me like an obstacle to remove in order to seize what money remained. After they left the house, sank into a crushing quiet. I sat amid the papers, tears falling onto the numbers. Each bill, each withdrawal, each fake emergency. They were all knife cuts. And in the end, their true faces were exposed, the family mask had fallen. I knew that from here on, I wasn't facing just greed, but a legal battle, a battle of the spirit. Marcus and Chloe wouldn't give up. But for the first time in years, I realized something else. I was no longer the soft mother who only nodded yes. I had said no, and I would fight to keep the one thing I still had: my own dignity. After the day Marcus and Chloe revealed their true faces, my house sank into an unusual silence. No more ringing phones, no more sudden knocks at the door, no more sweet words laced with demands. But that silence brought no peace. It was thick, heavy, like the sky before a great storm. I knew they hadn't let go. Chloe was not the type to accept defeat. And Marcus, my son, was so tightly bound in his wife's arms that he no longer saw his own mother. I sat in the worn armchair thinking about my life. I had sacrificed everything to raise him, to give him an education, a career, a home, a family. And now the only thing he wanted from me was money. 3 silent days passed. On the 4th day, the doorbell rang. I opened it, but there was no Marcus, no Chloe. On the doorstep lay a brown envelope. Inside a printed sheet, the words cold as ice: "Financial guardianship. Under review." My hands shook violently. I had never imagined my own son would drag me into court, accuse me of incompetence just to steal control of my finances. I collapsed into a chair, feeling as though the whole world had crumbled. That afternoon, I called Alma, my neighbor of 15 years. When she came over, I wept like a child. I told her everything: the loans, never repaid the credit card, abused the photocopies, the threats. Alma held my hand, her eyes steady. "Sylvia, you are not crazy and you are not senile. You have only trusted too much. But now it's time to fight. Don't let them take your life away." Her words lit a fire inside me. I could not sit and wait to be stripped bare. The next day, she took me to meet Vincent Harris, a lawyer specializing in protecting the elderly from financial abuse. Vincent was a man with salt and pepper hair, kind eyes, but a firm voice. When I told him everything, he simply nodded and said, "You are not alone. This is financial abuse within the family, and we will prove it." I handed him all the statements, notes, and the photocopy of my card with Chloe's scrawl. He examined every line, every number, then looked up. "We have evidence, not only to block the guardianship, but to file for fraud. But you must be ready. They will fight back. They will smear you, call you senile, bring neighbors as witnesses. This will be a long battle." I drew in a long breath. I've been silent too long. Now I have nothing left to lose but my honor. I will fight. The silent war began in the days that followed. Chloe no longer called, but rumors spread through the neighborhood. One day, a neighbor whispered, "I hear Sylvia is forgetting things. Could it be Alzheimer's?" Another time, I overheard at the market, "She accuses her own son of stealing. Something must be wrong in her head." I clenched my teeth. I knew where the words came from. Chloe and Marcus were building a narrative. I was a paranoid old woman falsely accusing her own child. If public opinion leaned their way, the court would more easily rule in their favor. One evening, while watering the garden, I noticed Marcus's car parked at the corner. He sat inside, not coming in, just watching before driving away. I understood they were watching me, waiting for a slip. My skin crawled, but I grew more determined. I had to remain clear-headed, sharper than ever. Vincent kept calling me into his office, preparing the case. He found proof that Chloe had used my card to shop while I was on the landline at home with the bank, proving I couldn't have been at the store. He discovered 3 credit accounts opened under my name, but with cards sent to Marcus's address. The total debt exceeded $15,000. When I heard that, it felt like a knife. My son was not just greedy, he was complicit in stealing his own mother's identity. I had raised him into a man, and this was what he had become. That night, I lay awake remembering Robert, my late husband. He once said, "Teach Marcus to be a decent man. That is the greatest inheritance we can give." I had tried my best, but now I asked myself, had I failed? One morning, Marcus called. His voice broke, feigning pain. "Mum, how could you sue us? You're tearing the family apart over money. Please withdraw the complaint. We'll pay it back, I promise." I froze for a moment, my heart aching. A part of me, the part that still loved my son, wanted to believe. But then I remembered every promise, every excuse, every lie. I gripped the phone tightly. "Marcus, you had 2 years to prove your promises, and you showed me only betrayal. Don't call again." I hung up. Tears streamed, but I felt lighter. I had chosen my side, the side of truth. A few days later, the other side struck back. Strangers came to my door pretending to buy flowers, then whispered, "I hear Mrs. Johnson has been shouting to herself." One afternoon, I found my car sprayed with red paint. "Crazy, stingy old woman," I told Vincent. He nodded gravely. "Exactly as I predicted. They're playing mind games, hoping you'll break. That's why you must stay calm. Record everything: calls, rumors, vandalism. The court will need evidence, and we will have it." From that day, I kept a journal. Dates, events, witnesses. Every rumor I heard I wrote down. Every scratch on my car I photographed. Every mocking call from Chloe I recorded. The more I documented, the clearer it became. This wasn't just a fight over money. This was a fight for myself. If I fell, they wouldn't just take my money, they'd take my voice, my right to my own life. One late night, the phone rang. I hesitated, then answered. Chloe's voice distorted as if through a cloth. "I hope you're happy destroying your family. But remember, your money isn't so clean. Ask the neighbors what your husband used to do in the dark." I froze. Robert, the decent man, the honest accountant, all his life was being slandered. They weren't just stealing my money, they were tainting my most sacred memories. I bit my lip until it bled, but I didn't cry. I knew if I cried, they would win. The next morning, I went to Alma. She embraced me and whispered, "Sylvia, you are not alone. We, those who truly call you friend, will testify to your clarity and your goodness. Don't be afraid." For the first time in months, warmth filled me. I was not alone. I had Alma. I had Vincent. I had the truth. The shadow war continued: rumors, vandalism, anonymous calls. But I was no longer the weak mother retreating. I had become a fighter against my own flesh and blood to keep not just my money, but my dignity. And I knew the day in court would come soon. When it did, the truth would be my final weapon. The day the summons arrived, my hands shook so hard I dropped my teacup. The bold letters read, "Hearing on petition for financial guardianship." My son Marcus had truly done it. He wanted the court to strip me of my rights, to declare me incompetent to legalize stealing from me. The night before the trial, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, moonlight spilling through the window, remembering holding Marcus as a newborn. He was tiny, red-faced, crying, and I had just lost Robert. I swore then, I will protect this child at all costs. 40 years later, that very child was the one I had to defend myself against. That morning, Alma came early, gripping my hand. "Sylvia, remember, you are not going in alone. I will testify. Vincent will be by your side. You just tell the truth." I nodded, breathing deep, trying to steady myself. The county courthouse was small but coldly bright. White walls, old wooden floors, the smell of paper mixed with tension. I walked into the courtroom, and my eyes immediately met Marcus and Chloe. They sat opposite, hands intertwined, faces hard. Marcus avoided my gaze, but Chloe wore a triumphant, mocking smile. The judge, an older man with graying hair and glasses slipping down his nose, spoke. "This hearing is now in session. Petitioners for guardianship, present your case." Chloe rose first, dressed in a black suit, her voice ringing like a performance. "Your Honor, my mother-in-law, Mrs. Sylvia Johnson, has shown severe memory loss. She forgets to pay bills, makes false accusations, and has recently imagined expenses that never existed. We request financial guardianship to ensure her safety." Marcus nodded, feigning sorrow. "Your Honor, I didn't want to do this, but I must. My mother is destroying herself and our family. I only want to help." Hearing those words, my heart ached, but I swallowed my tears. This was not the time to break. Vincent Rose adjusted his glasses and spoke firmly. "Your Honor, my client is fully competent. We will prove not only that she does not require guardianship, but that she is the victim of financial abuse and identity theft by her own son and daughter-in-law." The courtroom buzzed. Chloe paled but quickly regained her composure. The arguments began. They brought in a witness, a casual neighbor who claimed she once saw me struggle at a store. She fiddled for 10 minutes before remembering her PIN. I bit my lip, remembering the card reader had been broken that day, but no one cared. Then Chloe presented printed statements pointing to a large expense. She accuses us of theft, but here's a charge she made herself shopping online at 3 a.m. Who in their right mind does that? Vincent stepped forward, permission to present evidence. At that exact time, Mrs. Sylvia was on the phone with the bank to block her card recordings, confirm it. And the online charge came from an IP address registered to Marcus's home. The courtroom gasped. I looked at Marcus, his face drained, but Chloe still forced a smile. Vincent pressed on, producing the photocopied card with Chloe's initials, ATM footage of her withdrawing cash with my card, and documents showing 3 fraudulent credit accounts under my name with cards delivered to Marcus's home. Each piece of evidence was a hammer blow, nailing shut their lies. Finally, Alma was called. She stood tall, looking the judge in the eye. "Your Honor, I have lived next to Sylvia for 15 years. She is clear-minded, capable, and independent. The problem is not her, but those exploiting her trust." As she stepped down, I felt my throat tighten. I had never felt so defended. Then it was my turn. I rose, my hands shaking but my voice steady. "Your Honor, I am Sylvia Johnson. I am 70 years old and I am fully aware. I worked double shifts for 10 years to pay my son's tuition. I saved every penny to help him buy his first home. I have loved and sacrificed. And now today he calls me incompetent to take control of my own money. I am not fighting against family. I am fighting against abuse. And I stand here to defend my dignity, to hold on to the last bit of freedom in my life." My voice broke, tears spilling, but the courtroom was silent. The judge looked up, his eyes no longer cold. At the end, the judge leaned back, thoughtful. Then he struck his gavel. "Based on the evidence, the court denies the petition for guardianship. It affirms that Mrs. Sylvia Johnson is competent. Marcus Johnson and Chloe Johnson are ordered to return all misappropriated funds, cancel the fraudulent accounts, and are placed under a 2-year restraining order. This is not merely a family dispute, it is elder financial abuse." The gavel echoed like thunder. I sank into my chair, trembling not with fear but with relief. After months of torment, truth had prevailed. Marcus lowered his head, unable to meet my eyes. Chloe's face flushed red with rage. I felt no pain anymore, only emptiness. Emptiness and freedom. I turned to Alma and Vincent, gripping their hands. I whispered, "Thank you. Without you, I would have lost everything." That day, as I left the courthouse, the wind was gentle, the sky bright. For the first time in months, I felt free. I had lost my son, at least the boy I once knew, but I kept the most precious thing, my dignity and the right to live my own life. And this battle, though full of blood and tears, had given me one truth: motherhood can be betrayed, but justice and self-respect never will. I thought that after the judge's final gavel, I would be able to live in peace. But in reality, the victory in the courtroom was only the beginning of another storm, one fiercer, more vicious. At first, the days passed quietly. Alma moved in with me for a few nights. Vincent still stopped by to check the paperwork. I tended my garden, cooked, read, and thought I had regained my old rhythm of life. But the silence felt like the still surface of a lake before the storm descends. One morning at the market, a neighbor leaned in and whispered, "Mrs. Sylvia, I heard people say, your husband used to be involved in shady business. Is that true?" I froze. Robert, the devoted man who had worked as an accountant for 20 years, never once touching anything unlawful. I shook my head, but I could already see suspicion flickering in their eyes. On the way home, I overheard young women gossiping. They say that old lady was sued by her son for paranoia. When old people get stubborn, the whole family suffers. Their laughter followed me down the street. I knew this was Chloe's doing. Losing in court, she had turned to a sharper weapon: rumors. The phone calls began too. At first, only silence, faint breathing in the receiver. Then distorted voices mocking women's tones, sometimes shouting, "Crazy miser." One night, the phone rang at midnight. I picked up, and Chloe's cold voice slid through the line. "Did you sleep well? Must be lonely, isn't it?" My heart pounded wildly. I set the phone down but could not fall back asleep. My once familiar home had become a place of lurking shadows. One afternoon, while watering plants, I saw red paint scrawled across my gate. "Senile old woman." My hands shook so violently the watering can fell. Neighbors began to gather, staring at me with curiosity and pity. I overheard, "Must be the daughter-in-law." Well, who knows what's true in another family's home? I bit my lip and wept into the very flowers I had tended for years. Vincent came as soon as he heard. His voice was firm. "This is systematic harassment. We'll add this evidence to present in court." Alma wrapped her arm around my shoulders and whispered, "Don't be afraid. You stood strong in court, and you'll stand strong outside it too." But I knew one rumor could kill a reputation more slowly and more painfully than any sentence. In the following days, I tried going back to church for solace. Yet as soon as I walked in, heads turned. I heard whispers. "That's Sylvia. I heard she's losing her mind. The court just had a case on her." I sat down in the wooden pew, bowed my head, but the murmurs seeped into my ears. I prayed, but instead of feeling God's presence, I felt only an empty chill. Worse still, Marcus tried to reach me through mutual acquaintances. "An old friend called your son, asked me to talk to you. He says he only wants peace, but you're too rigid. He told me you can't even remember your own past." I gripped the phone, trembling. He has forgotten the past, not me. I remember every drop of sweat I shed to raise him. I remember every dollar I saved to give him a start in life. And because I remember so clearly, I cannot let him destroy me again. I hung up, tears streaming down. One night while Alma slept in the living room, I stepped onto the porch for air. A brown envelope had been slid under the door. Inside was a photo of me with Marcus as a boy, along with a scrawled note. "If you still love your son, stop this." I collapsed into a chair, clutching the photo. My little boy's innocent face overlapped with the cold, hardened man in court. I wondered which Marcus was real, Had my son died in memory, or was he still there, twisted by greed and Chloe's hand? Vincent advised me, "You must remain steady." Abusers always try to make victims doubt themselves. Don't let them win the psychological battle. I nodded, but inside I wavered. At night, staring in the mirror, I asked, "Am I truly losing my mind, as they say?" But then I remembered the documents, the evidence, the clarity I had in court. No, I wasn't crazy. I was a mother betrayed by her own child. A week later, I decided to fight back. With Vincent's help, we organized a small gathering at church, inviting neighbors and close friends. I stood before them and told everything from the unpaid loans to the stolen card to the trial. I showed the court-stamped papers, the undeniable proof. The room fell silent. When I finished, an elderly woman stepped forward, took my hand. "Mrs. Sylvia, I believe you. We all believe you." Applause broke out, not loud, but enough to lighten my heart. For the first time, the darkness of rumor was pierced by the light of truth. Still, I knew the war was not over. Chloe was out there. Marcus still lingered in the shadows of greed and resentment. But I was no longer shrinking in fear. I had learned to stand and face them. That night, I wrote in my journal, "They can smear my walls, tarnish my name, but they cannot take my soul. Dirt may cover my door, but inside, I still keep the light." I closed the book, lifted my head toward the garden. The flowers were still blooming, proud, defiant despite the storm, and so was I. I once thought that at 70, love had long since left me. After Robert died, I saw myself as an old tree, good only for giving shade to my son. I never imagined someone would come touch my wounded heart and awaken a feeling I thought was gone forever. But then came Vincent. He entered my life first as a savior-in-law, a sharp, devoted attorney. I still remember the first day I met him, tall, slender, neatly combed, silver hair, eyes, serious but not cold. As I told my story, his pen never stopped moving, but his gaze said, "I believe you." After the trial, Vincent often stopped by, not only with files, but sometimes just to check if I was safe. At first I thought it was mere duty, but slowly I realized his presence brought something more: peace. One autumn afternoon, he sat in my garden gazing at the vibrant bougainvillea and asked, "How did you get this to bloom so beautifully? I've tried, but mine never flowers." I smiled for the first time in months. Plants are like people. They need patience. A little water every day, a bit of pruning, and a lot of love. He looked at me with surprising tenderness. Perhaps I need to learn that, not just for plants, but for my life. His words made me blush, my heart fluttering like a girl of 20. After that, he didn't only bring legal files, but small gifts: a gardening book, a box of chamomile tea one evening, even a bag of cookies he had baked himself. He confessed that since his wife's death, he had lived quietly, alone, his 3 children far away, and his work, his only anchor. You know, he smiled. I thought all I had left was justice. But meeting you showed me that sometimes justice has a human face, warm, close. I stayed silent, but inside, my soul stirred. One rainy evening, he lingered longer than usual. I brewed tea. He spoke of the nights of emptiness after losing his wife, the times he stood before her wardrobe, unable to open it. I quietly laid my hand on the table. He gently touched it. Just a touch, but it felt like lightning through me. "Mrs. Sylvia," he whispered, "you remind me that life can still be warm, and I'd like to bring that warmth to you if you'll allow it." Tears slid down my cheeks. I stammered, "Vincent, I've lost too much. I fear I no longer have the courage to accept more." He squeezed my hand. "Then let me be the courageous one. You only need to open your heart." In the days that followed, I felt myself changing. In the mirror, I still saw wrinkles, but also a new light in my eyes. I began noticing my hair, my dresses, the forgotten bottle of perfume. I cooked not only for myself, but for 2. Alma teased Mrs. Sylvia, You look 10 years younger? I laughed shyly, but inside I felt a quiet joy. Vincent didn't erase my pain about Marcus, but he kept me from drowning in it. He never told me forgive or forget. He simply listened, let me cry, let me remember. Then gently reminded me, you still have a life ahead, and you deserve to live it for yourself. For the first time in years, I believed it. One winter afternoon, while cleaning out the storage room together, Vincent found an old wooden box. Inside were letters Robert had written me, awkward but heartfelt love notes. My hands trembled as I read, tears falling. He loved you deeply, Vincent said firmly. And I promise you, I will never try to replace that love. I only want to walk beside you in the years that remain. I looked up and saw in his eyes no ambition, no calculation, only sincerity. I realized then, love is not replacement, but continuation. That night, I wrote in my journal, after all the loss, I have found something I thought no longer existed, love. Not loud, not stormy, but a small flame enough to warm a heart that had been cold for too long. I knew Marcus and Chloe still lingered in the shadows weaving malice, but I also knew I was no longer alone. I had Alma steadfast as ever. I had Vincent a companion, a support, an unexpected light in the twilight of my years. And for the first time in many years, I wasn't merely surviving, I was truly living. Here's the English translation of your passage, kept in a warm, dramatic American storytelling voice suitable for voiceover. I thought that after the trial, after the red letters sprayed across my gate, after the midnight phone calls, Marcus and Chloe would grow tired and let go. But I was wrong. They didn't let go. Instead, they prepared a death blow. It began with a small article in the local paper. The bold headline read, "Elderly woman suspected of losing her mind sues son to keep her assets." The piece had my name, even a photo of my gate with the words, "senile old woman" on it. The writer slipped in quotes from close sources saying I was often paranoid, that I'd shouted at neighbors for no reason, that I was easily manipulated by others. At the end of the article, I saw Marcus's name, her only son, a victim misunderstood by his mother. My heart stabbed with pain. The child I once held in my arms was now publicly smearing me before the whole town. The whispers in the neighborhood grew heavier. Acquaintances avoided my eyes. Some asked outright, "Mrs. Sylvia, is it true you plan to hand all your assets to that lawyer people are talking?" I trembled. The rumors weren't just about me, they targeted Vincent as well. They wanted to paint him as a man exploiting a wealthy widow. That night, I sat at the table and looked at Vincent. "Perhaps you should stay away from me. They'll drag your name through the mud too." He was silent for a moment, then took my hand. "If I walk away because of gossip, I don't deserve to stand beside you. We'll face this together." His words made me cry, but they also filled me with a strange strength. It didn't stop there. Chloe sent a letter to the church accusing me of being selfish, greedy, tearing apart kinship, using a lawyer to seize money. A copy was pinned to the notice board. When I went to church that day, people gathered to read, whispering. Some turned away, but others approached and laid a hand on my shoulder. "Mrs. Sylvia, don't be afraid. We know who you are." Just one sentence, but enough to show me there was still light in the darkness. Vincent decided to fight back legally. He gathered everything: the article, the letter, the threatening messages. "We'll sue them for defamation and harassment." But Marcus wasn't easy to cow. One morning, I received another court summons. This time, Marcus was the plaintiff. He accused me of abusing the legal system and defaming the honor of his family. I was stunned. Never in my life had I imagined I'd sit as a defendant facing my own son. But Vincent placed a hand on my shoulder, his voice steady. "You're not alone. They can play games, but we have the truth." On the day of the hearing, the courtroom was packed. Marcus wore a sharp suit, looking polished. Chloe sat beside him, feigning frailty, eyes rimmed red. They claimed I made things up, that I was being manipulated by my attorney to turn against my family. When it was my turn, I stood hands shaking, voice resolute. Your Honor, I did not invent anything. My own son took more than $25,000 from me by exploiting a mother's love. I don't want to stand here against my own flesh and blood. But if I stay silent, I lose both my money and my dignity. I held up photos, statements, the documents Vincent had prepared, black and white, every number clear. And I ended with, Your Honor, I may be old. My hair may be white, but I am not senile. I am still clear enough to know the difference between love and exploitation. The hearing dragged on for hours. Marcus's lawyer poked at my age, hinting I forgot things, got confused. Then Vincent called my physician, who had followed my health for years. He stated Mrs. Sylvia is fully lucid with no signs of cognitive decline. In the end, the court dismissed Marcus's suit. Moreover, the judge warned that if Marcus and Chloe continued harassing me, they would face harsher penalties. As I left the courtroom, I glimpsed Marcus in the hallway, eyes bloodshot, jaw clenched. Chloe tugged at his sleeve, whispering something. For a second, Marcus looked at me, anger and despair mixed together. I wanted to run and hold him, but my feet stopped. I understood the son I once knew had strayed too far. That evening, I sat in the garden with Vincent. The night air was cool. The bougainvillea scented the breeze. He said, This battle has taken so much from you, but you've held on to the most important thing, the truth. I looked up at the stars. In my heart, I knew I'd won, not because the court ruled in my favor, but because I was no longer afraid. I had stared into the dark and stayed standing, but I also knew every victory has a price. I lost Marcus, at least the gentle son I had raised. I lost the innocence of believing family could overcome everything. Yet I gained something: freedom. I was no longer anyone's hostage. I had the right to live the rest of my life the way I chose. That night, I wrote in my journal, The final battle isn't in court. The final battle is with the fear inside your own heart. And today, I won. There are mornings when I wake up, open the window, and sunlight floods the garden. That light is a reminder I am still here. I am still living. I have made it through a long, unbroken night. After so many storms, I learned that peace doesn't arrive on its own. It must be claimed and kept with resilience and faith. Vincent moved in on a golden autumn day. He brought a few boxes of law books, some green plants, and a gentle smile. The house that had held so much tension now held laughter, the smell of morning coffee, the sound of him reading the paper on the porch. Mrs. Sylvia, he liked to say, half teasing, half earnest, thanks to you, I know I can still start over. At our age, who would think love would come knocking? I laughed, eyes stinging. I had thought the years ahead would be nothing but waiting, counting days. Now I know there is no such thing as too late to live, to love, to dream. Every day, Vincent and I tend the garden. We turned Robert's old study into a small library where Vincent's books stand beside my family photo albums. One afternoon, I hung our wedding photo on the wall. I turned to Vincent, anxious. Does it bother you that I keep him here? Vincent shook his head gently. On the contrary, he's part of your life. I want to honor that with you, not erase it. I'm not here to replace anyone, I'm here to walk beside you. My heart went quiet. That was the love I had longed for, not demanding, not possessive, simply companioning. I also began joining community activities again. At a church meeting, I shared my story not to complain, but to warn other older women. I once believed love meant giving without limits. Now I know love needs boundaries. If we don't learn to say no, we will lose ourselves. There was applause. Some people hugged me. One woman cried and whispered, Mrs. Sylvia, your story is my pain too. I realized my pain wasn't meaningless. It had become a voice for those who hadn't yet dared to speak. Once a young woman came to my home introducing herself as a journalist. She wanted to write about victims of financial abuse within families. I agreed and for the first time told my story under my real name. The article spread. Many called to thank me. I read the responses, tears falling. When we dare to speak the truth, it doesn't just free us, it opens a path for others. Of course, I still think of Marcus. Sometimes, while making tea, I hear the echo of his childlike laughter. Sometimes, I glimpse a man on the street with a familiar gait and my heart clenches. Somewhere, he's living another life, perhaps still stumbling through the wreckage he created. I don't hate him. I'm just sad. But that sorrow no longer holds me. I've learned to let go. One summer evening, Vincent and I sat on the porch listening to the insects hum. He took my hand and spoke softly. "Mrs. Sylvia, do you think we should make this official? I want to take care of you, not just as a companion, but as family." I looked at him through tears. At 70, I was being proposed to something I thought existed only in novels. I nodded. Yes, I want that too. We had a small, simple wedding, just a few close friends, Alma as our witness and our smiles. No luxury, no noise, only honest love. I wore a pale blue dress, my hair pinned with bougainvillea from the garden. When Vincent took my hand, I could hear my own heartbeat like a young girl's first love. It wasn't the beginning of a fairy tale. It was the continuation of two lives once wounded, now joined to find meaning again. Now each morning I wake without fearing a sudden knock or a midnight phone. I know the world beyond still holds storms, but in this house, I have a place of peace. I wrote the last lines in my journal. At 72, I learn this sometimes: to have everything you must accept, losing everything. I lost money. I lost the son who once was my whole world. But I got myself back. I got back my freedom, my self-respect. And most of all, I found a new love, a love that takes nothing away, only adds. I closed the book and looked out at the garden in bloom. Morning light poured in bright and clean. I smiled. My life isn't over. It has only just begun again.